You think you're thinking, but you're not. You're just feeling with structure. Most people don't think. They react, justify, overanalyze, and then call it thought. But when you trace it back, what looks like logic is just emotion wearing a mask. Triggered, you spiral into storylines. Offended, you start planning comebacks. Rejected, you craft theories to protect your ego, but all of it still comes from the same place: unfiltered emotion. And here's the problem. As long as emotion runs your system, your thinking is not yours, it's theirs. Whoever controls your triggers controls your conclusions. In this video, we'll teach you how to build a new operating system. Emotionless, strategic, untouchable, not to become cold, but to become sovereign. Part 1. Why most minds are emotion-driven systems. Most people think they're thinking, but what they're really doing is rephrasing emotion. They don't analyze, they justify, they don't calculate, they react, and then they wrap it all in words that sound smart. But if you trace it deeper, you'll find emotional heat sitting beneath every thought. How emotion hijacks thought. Here's how it works. A trigger happens. Emotion rushes in, fast, instinctive, raw. The brain scrambles to interpret it. Thoughts form, not to seek truth, but to protect the ego. The result? You're not thinking clearly. You're thinking emotionally. And emotion moves fast. So fast that by the time you've decided, you've already been decided. The autopilot you didn't see. You say, "I just feel like they're using me. I don't trust that tone. I think they're pulling away." But what's really happening? You're threatened. You feel insecure. And now the mind is rushing to build a narrative to stabilize the emotion, not to find facts, not to win strategy, but to feel okay. That's not thought. That's reaction management in disguise. The illusion of logic. The smarter you are, the more dangerous this becomes, because you'll use intellect to reinforce emotion. You'll build airtight arguments around assumptions rooted in fear, guilt, shame, ego. You'll call it reason, but it's reaction in a suit. The system you're running was not designed by you. Here's the worst part. The emotional responses that hijack your thoughts weren't even coded by you. They were installed by family conditioning, reinforced by trauma, shaped by culture and reward systems, reactivated by subconscious patterns. And now, every time you think after a trigger, you're just reactivating someone else's programming until you uninstall that operating system. You don't think, you repeat. And a mind that only repeats can be controlled by anyone who understands the code. Part 2. Identify emotional loops in your cognitive code. You don't think in straight lines, you think in loops. And most of those loops aren't built by reason. They're powered by emotion. They repeat, they intensify, and they override logic again and again, until you become a person who doesn't make decisions. You just follow the same internal script, disguised as thought. What is an emotional loop? An emotional loop is when a trigger fires arrow, an emotion hijacks arrow, a thought forms to stabilize arrow, a reaction plays out arrow. The outcome reinforces the original feeling arrow. Repeat. These loops run silently, effortlessly, automatically, And worst of all, you think it's just how you are. Common loops to identify: rejection, worthlessness, overthinking, clinginess, criticism, shame, justification, self-doubt, uncertainty, fear, control behavior, conflict, silence, abandonment, mental noise, over-explaining. These loops become mental operating systems, and if you don't scan them, you will call them intuition. The loop scan technique. Step 1. Reverse trace. When you feel triggered, pause. Ask, what feeling came up first? What thought wrapped around it? What behavior followed automatically? Have I done this before? Step 2. Document the pattern. Give the loop a name, e.g., fear of loss spiral, validation reflex. Describe it in 3 lines: trigger, emotional spike, behavioral compulsion. Step 3. Tag the origin. Ask, where did I first learn this reaction? Whose voice does it sound like? Was this ever a survival mechanism? Once you know the origin, you strip the loop of its authority. Why this matters. You can't reprogram what you can't see. And if you try to fix behavior, without identifying the loop underneath, you'll always relapse. But the moment you see the full loop, you create separation. And with separation comes power. You stop saying, that's just how I think, and start saying, that's a script, I'm rewriting it. Strategic detachment from loops. Once identified, the goal isn't to feel better. The goal is to disconnect behavior from emotion, to replace unconscious patterning with conscious protocols. Emotion equals signal. Thought equals filter. Action equals selected, not automatic. Now your system is no longer a machine running on fear. It becomes a weapon directed by will. Part 3. Create mental separation between emotion and logic. If you don't separate emotion from logic, emotion becomes your logic. And once that happens, you lose your edge. You justify weakness. You call fear intuition. You label overreaction as authenticity, and you confuse intensity with truth. But real power begins when you draw a hard line. Feel here, think there. Why you need 2 channels. Your mind needs 2 independent systems. Channel 1, emotional awareness, sensory input, body signals, energy shifts. Channel 2, tactical processing, situation analysis, pattern recognition, strategic response. When you mix both, you get noise. When you separate them, you get clarity. What happens without separation? Let's say someone disrespects you. Without separation, you feel hurt. You respond emotionally. You try to win the moment. You lose long-term leverage. With separation, you notice the feeling. You log it, but don't act on it. You switch to channel 2. You calculate the cost of reaction versus reward of silence. Now you're not reacting, you're commanding. How to build the firewall. 1. Install the internal trigger check. When emotion spikes, ask, is this real or just familiar? What would I do if I felt nothing right now? Does this need to be solved or just observed? This rewires your first impulse from action to analysis. Second route, all input through logic. First, Train yourself to pause before verbalizing. Say to yourself, "This is input, not instruction." Let the feeling inform you, but let logic decide for you. Even 5 seconds of stillness can override 5 years of bad patterns. 3. Create a default protocol. Build a standard response to emotional activation. Step back. Don't speak. Don't type. Switch to channel 2. What's the long game? You don't trust emotion. You test it. And if it fails the test, you don't use it. The result, tactical thinking becomes default. Now, when people provoke, you don't react. You assess. Now, when you feel insecure, you don't compensate. You investigate. Now, when you're emotionally pulled, you don't follow. You watch. Your mind becomes quiet, not because you feel nothing, but because nothing enters without your permission. You don't stop feeling. You just stop letting feeling make decisions. And once you do that, your thoughts become clean, sharp, and weaponized. Part 4. Code-based thinking. Decision by protocol, not emotion. Emotion wants chaos. Strategy wants clarity. You don't win by feeling your way through every problem. You win by systematizing your response. Not improvisation, not reaction, but pre-coded execution. What is code-based thinking? It's simple. If X happens, run protocol A. If Y appears, run protocol B. No thinking, no re-evaluating, no second-guessing. Like a military system, like a defense mechanism with logic at its core. You don't ask, "What do I feel like doing?" You ask, "What's the protocol for this scenario?" Why emotion fails in high-pressure situations. Emotion wants to feel safe. Strategy wants to win. Emotion seeks resolution. Strategy seeks advantage. Emotion reacts. Strategy executes. You need a system that won't collapse when the stakes are high. That means you don't feel your way through problems. You code your way out. Building your personal response protocol library. Start with your most common triggers. Example 1. Criticism. Protocol. A. No defense. Eye contact. One-sentence response. End. Example 2. Emotional manipulation. In Protocol B, no reply for 12 to 24 hours. Evaluate from distance. Frame shift. Example 3. Rejection or ghosting. Protocol C. No chasing, no explaining. Full withdrawal. Return power to center. Each protocol equals a boundary, a response, a result. The advantage of protocol-based living. Speed. You don't waste mental energy on decision fatigue. You run code and move. Consistency. No more emotionally unstable reactions. Your behavior becomes calm, measured, and predictable to you, not them. Power preservation. You don't burn energy trying to feel better. You channel it into control, presence, frame. Write like a programmer, think like a machine. Here's the mental framework. Input arrow, process arrow, output. Not, trigger, emotion, chaos. And when someone tries to break that chain with surprise, provocation, or pressure, the code holds. You don't need to feel better. You need to run the correct line of command. Bonus, adaptive layering. Advanced strategy. Build multi-layered fallback responses. Level 1, default reaction. Level 2, strategic delay. Level 3, disengagement plus frame control. This makes you non-predictable, but always coherent. They think they've gotten to you, but they're just triggering code they can't override. People who operate emotionally are playing chess with their eyes closed. People who operate by protocol don't play chess. They design the board. Part 5. When emotionless thinking becomes a weapon. At first, emotionless thinking feels like discipline. Then it becomes a skill. But eventually, it becomes a weapon. Not because you use it to attack, but because it makes you untouchable. The power of not reacting. They insult you. You don't blink. They withdraw. You don't chase. They try to confuse you. You respond with silence or strategy, and that unsettles them because it breaks the script. They expect noise. You give them quiet. They expect emotion. You give them structure. Now they're not in control anymore. You are. Why emotionless thinking destroys manipulation. Manipulators rely on 3 things: your need to feel understood, your fear of being alone, your reflex to defend yourself. Remove those 3, they're left with nothing. Because when your mind doesn't move unless you tell it to, you become unreadable, unpredictable, unbreakable. Their confusion becomes your advantage. Most people don't know what to do when someone won't argue back, when someone doesn't try to prove anything, when someone doesn't take the bait. So they get louder, more emotional, more dramatic, and all you do is observe. What a clear sign of weakness. Their chaos is trying to find a crack in my stillness. And guess what? They burn energy. You keep power. Your stillness triggers insecurity in others. You're not cold, you're composed. But to the emotionally chaotic, that feels like rejection. It feels like mystery. It feels like threat. Because they don't understand how you can. Stay quiet, stay still, stay structured, while they fall apart. And that's when you've won, not by dominating them, but by not giving them the war they came for. You didn't fight back. You didn't flinch. You didn't engage. You stayed clear. And that clarity was the sharpest weapon in the room. Final CTA. You no longer think through emotion. You think through protocol. You don't react to feelings. You recognize them, then route them through structure. You've built a system, a clean, sharp, internal machine. That doesn't move unless you command it. No more spiraling, no more decoding, no more second-guessing. Because now, your mind doesn't chase clarity, it creates it. This isn't emotional numbness, it's emotional sovereignty. You don't suppress anything. You simply don't let noise enter the control room. And when your mind becomes that clear, that structured, that untouchable, you become the one they can't read, can't bait, can't predict. You stop reacting to the world. The world starts reacting to you. Next video, number 95, Win Without Emotion, Cold Logic in Everyday Conflict. Now that you've built the system, it's time to deploy it. In real time, in real situations, against real pressure. This is where cold logic becomes dominance, not in theory, but in war.